Hello and thanks for joining us for our mid-morning edition of Arirang News. I'm Mark Broom. Let's kick things off with a look at the day's headlines. K-pop in Pyongyang. South Korea is returning the favour, sending stars north of the border after North Korea's art troupe performed at the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. Scientific proof. Local researchers say they finally have undeniable evidence that China is a major contributor to South Korea's fine dust problem. Plus, France's former president Nicolas Sarkozy is in police custody over allegations he received millions of euros in illegal financing from the former Gaddafi regime in Libya. So it's official. For the first time in well over a decade, K-pop stars will be holding shows in the North Korean capital next month, with the first performance date set for April 1st. The star-studded lineup includes veteran singer Jo Young-pil and the K-pop girl group Red Velvet. Kwon Jang-oh starts us off.
After meeting with representatives from North Korea, singer and composer Yoon Sang confirmed that the two sides agreed on the South Korean pop concerts that will be held in Pyongyang.
The South will send an art troupe to the North made up of 160 members. The artists will stay in Pyongyang from March 31st to April 3rd and put on two concerts at the East Pyongyang Grand Theater and the Pyongyang Arena.
Also announced was the list of artists who have accepted the invitation to perform and who have been approved by North Korea. They include pop legends such as Jo Young-pil and Lee Sunhee, as well as current K-pop artists such as the female idol group Red Velvet. The first concert will feature South Korean artists, while the second will have collaborations with North Korean performers. The two sides also agreed on an advance team coming from the South to inspect the venues. They will leave on Thursday for a 3-day trip to check the facilities, accommodation and travel route. For any further preparatory arrangements, the two sides agreed to continue discussions via the Panmunjom communications channel. Despite being the first non-government official to head such talks with North Korea, Yoon said they went smoothly. However, he added that with only 11 days till they leave for Pyongyang, they have much to prepare, including a final song list.
It would have been nice to agree upon the song list today, but there were some difficulties in negotiating the songs we wanted and the ones they wanted. I wouldn't say it was political, but more because there were many songs they did not know.
Seoul will be hoping the concert carries on the current positive mood between the two Koreas ahead of the landmark summit between President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, which takes place later in April. Kwon Jang-oh, Arirang News.
Now, a number of issues were discussed during day one of the Track 1.5 meeting in Finland, involving government and non-governmental officials from Seoul, Washington and Pyongyang. Taking place in Helsinki on Tuesday, representatives of the three sides talked about the upcoming back-to-back summits with North Korea, as well as the regime's denuclearization. They also discussed the pre-summit efforts needed from other regional powers such as China, Japan and Russia. The participants include South Korean experts, North Korea's Deputy Director for North American Affairs, Choi Gang-il, and retired U.S. diplomat Kathleen Stevens. The talks will continue on Wednesday. And another crunch summit could be coming up in early May, with the leaders of South Korea, China and Japan all around one table. Citing multiple diplomatic sources and reports out of China, Japan's Kyodo News Agency reports that a summit chaired by South Korean President Moon Jae-in, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe will be held around May 8th or 9th, shortly after the planned Inter-Korean summit and the same month as the proposed US-North Korea summit. South Korea's presidential office, however, was cautious to confirm those exact dates and asserted they are still in the process of fine-tuning the details. The three leaders are expected to talk about North Korea, economic issues and environmental concerns. The meeting, set to take place in Tokyo, would mark the first of its kind since the three sides met in Seoul in late 2015. And it would be the first time for a South Korean leader to visit Japan in 7 years. China's historic 16-day National People's Congress ended on Tuesday with the country's new President for life, Xi Jinping giving his closing address. Lee Seung-jae reports.
China is set to begin a new era under its newly empowered President Xi Jinping. With the curtain coming down on the National People's Congress on Tuesday, the country's top officials unveiled their specific targets and priorities for development this year, while cementing the new state leadership and government. As the annual session of the ceremonial parliament came to an end, President Xi struck a strongly nationalistic tone in his closing address, saying he would never allow 1 inch of Chinese territory to be separated from China. Addressing nearly 3,000 members of the Congress who had earlier abolished term limits on Xi's rule, President Xi referred to self-governing Taiwan, adding that he will continue to reach out to advance the cause of peaceful unification. Chinese Premier Li Keqiang, who was handed a second 5-year term during the Congress, said the North Korean nuclear issue must be dealt with dialogue. Li said China would do its utmost to promote the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula and maintain peace and stability in Korea. He added there was a high degree of concern on the matter in China, as it's geographically very close to the peninsula. With China's roadmap set for now, many watchers wonder how the new era of China under Xi Jinping rule will affect not just China, but the Korean peninsula and the world. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
U.S. President Donald Trump has congratulated Russian President Vladimir Putin on his re-election via phone call, during which he also stressed the importance of denuclearizing the Korean peninsula. According to the White House on Tuesday, Trump said he will meet with the Russian leader in the not-too-distant future to discuss various agenda, including the North Korean nuclear issue. Trump and Putin also agreed to continue dialogue to tackle common challenges and emphasize the need to maintain strategic stability. The annual joint military drills between Seoul and Washington, postponed to honor the Olympic spirit, will begin on April 1st. But given their upcoming summits with North Korea, the Allies' drills won't be all that similar to years gone by. Oh Jung-hee reports.
South Korea military authorities announced the schedule of the delayed Seoul-Washington joint military drills on Tuesday.
Defense chiefs of South Korea and the U.S. agreed to resume the annual combined exercises, including this year's Key Resolve drill, the schedules of which are delayed considering the Olympic spirit. The exercises will begin on April 1st and be at a similar level to previous years.
This year's drills are shorter than in previous years. The Key Resolve, a computerized simulation exercise, is to be held for about 2 weeks starting mid-April, the same length as last year's. But the full Eagle, which involves the deployment of troops and military equipment, will last 4 weeks starting April 1st, half the length of last year's drill. Seoul has notified Pyongyang of the drill schedule through its Western military communication line. It's also highly likely that the drills will be held at a lower intensity. Whether U.S. strategic assets like nuclear-powered submarines or aircraft carriers participate in the exercises generally determines how intense the drills will be. South Korea's defense ministry didn't specify further on that matter, only saying that South Korea and the U.S. are currently discussing the matter. But according to reports, the drills may not involve B-1B bombers or nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. This is viewed as an attempt to avoid irritating North Korea ahead of inter-Korean talks and Washington-Pyongyang talks planned over the next 2 months. Seoul's defense ministry stressed that the drills are only to safeguard the nation's defense. The Pentagon also underscored Seoul's stance by saying the combined exercises are defense-oriented as they have been for many decades. There is a possibility that both drills could overlap with the inter-Korean summit talks slated for late April, depending on the actual date of the talks. But South Korea's military authorities say the drills will be held just as planned, regardless of the talks. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
Now for a look at stories making headlines around the world, and we're going to start in France today. Former President Nicolas Sarkozy has been questioned by police over allegations he received millions of euros in illicit campaign funding from the late Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Noah Aram. So Aram, give us the details.
Well, Mark, the inquiry began in 2013, but police on Tuesday took Sarkozy into custody for questioning for the first time over the allegations. The investigation is potentially France's most explosive political financing scandal in decades. The former president has dismissed allegations that Gaddafi illegally funded his 2007 campaign as grotesque and a crude manipulation. The amount of money in question was 50 million euros, more than double the legal campaign funding limit, which at the time was 21 million. The alleged payments would also violate French rules against foreign financing and declaring the source of campaign funds. The inquiry was kicked off after the French investigative website Mediapart published a document it said was signed by a senior Libyan figure stating the regime approved the 50 million euro payment. Sarkozy and his close aides had claimed the documents were false, but French courts had ruled certain ones were authentic, enabling the probe to go on. It gained steam after a French-Lebanese businessman who was close to Gaddafi's regime told Mediapart 2 years ago that he was the one who personally delivered suitcases of the cash. Sarkozy had refused police summons up until now, and now that he has finally shown up, police can hold him for 48 hours. After that, they can release him or send him before magistrates who decide whether they have grounds for turning a preliminary inquiry into a full investigation. A teenage gunman has injured 2 fellow students at a high school in the U.S. state of Maryland, setting off another round of debates on national gun control. 17-year-old Austin Wyatt Rollins opened fire on a male and a female student on Tuesday before being shot by a school resource officer. He was later pronounced dead in hospital. The female student is in critical condition and is known to have had a prior relationship with the gunman. Tuesday's shooting at Great Mills High School happened just over a month after 17 people were fatally shot at a high school in Florida. Facebook is being pursued by the U.S. Federal Trade Commission over a massive data leak. The FTC is probing how Cambridge Analytica, a British data analytics firm hired by Donald Trump's presidential campaign, obtained the personal data of 50 million Facebook users. It is reviewing whether Facebook violated a 2011 consent decree regarding the firm's privacy protections and whether Cambridge Analytica used the data for political gains. US and EU lawmakers have also demanded Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg provide answers as to why his firm failed to inform its users of the data leak. Both firms deny any wrongdoing. E-commerce giant Amazon has overtaken Alphabet, Google's parent company, to become the second most valuable company in the US and now just trails Apple on the list of the world's most valuable companies. On Tuesday, Amazon's value rose 2.7%, lifting its stock market value to $768 billion to climb above Alphabet, which fell 0.4% to $762.5 billion. Amazon stock has surged 85% over the past year, including a 35% rise since the start of 2018. This comes as investors have been betting on the company's growing and very profitable cloud computing business.
Now back to domestic news, and the arrest warrant for Lee Myung-bak will be reviewed on Thursday, but the former president accused of corruption will not be present at the session. He claims to have explained himself in full during last week's interrogation by prosecutors. Park Hee-jun with the details.
The Seoul Central District Court said Tuesday that it'll hold a hearing on Thursday at 10:30 a.m. to review whether to issue an arrest warrant for ex-President Lee Myung-bak. But Lee Myung-bak himself will not be attending the hearing. Only prosecutors and his lawyers will be going. Lee said through his staff that there is no need to go, since he already explained himself during last week's marathon interrogation. If he doesn't appear, the court will have to decide without further hearings, but instead by going over the interrogation records and other evidence from the investigation. Lee was president of South Korea from 2008 to 2013, and he's suspected of accepting bribes worth around $10 million. He's also accused of using false names to conceal his ownership of the auto parts company DAS, which he allegedly used to accumulate slush funds worth nearly $30 million. The former president has been denying almost all of the allegations, but considering the gravity of the charges and the possibility that he could destroy evidence, the prosecution explained that there was no option but to seek his arrest. The court is expected to decide as soon as Thursday night whether to issue the warrant. And if it does, Lee Myung-bak will be the fourth former South Korean leader to face arrest for corruption. Park Ki-jun, Arirang News.
Now, the weather is gradually warming up after a long, cold winter, but unfortunately at this time, each and every year, Korea is blanketed in a thick layer of fine dust. While it has been difficult to prove how responsible China is, local researchers now say they have enough evidence to prove pollution from China is a major contributor to the problem. Our Kim Hyo-sun reports.
Toward the end of January 2017, Korea was covered in a blanket of ultrafine dust. This was when China began its celebration of Spring Festival, also known as Chunjie. While China is known to be associated with South Korea's worsening air quality, proving this scientifically was a challenge, as particles similar to the compound of ultrafine dust are also emitted through domestic industrial and agricultural activities. Yet a group of Korean researchers have proved that China is responsible for a lot of the nation's fine dust through real-time measurements of potassium and levoglucosan, which constitute ultrafine dust. While potassium is emitted during fireworks and biomass combustion, levoglucosan is only emitted during biomass combustion. The research team found the concentration of potassium in the atmosphere increased 7-fold in South Korea at the end of January last year, while levels of levoglucosan remain the same.
We proved that pollutants emitted from fireworks were carried all the way to Korea.
The researchers say this is a more accurate measurement compared to satellite video, conventionally used to measure air quality, as it only provides a macroscopic view of airflow.
This research will likely be used to study how various pollutants affect the concentration level of ultrafine dust in Korea.
The study, which could be crucial evidence for establishing policies to reduce fine dust in Northeast Asia, will also be published in next month's edition of the international scientific journal Atmospheric Environment. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
Now, it's that time of the year again. Movers and shakers of the fashion industry are gathered under one roof to celebrate fashion in all its glitz and glamour. Our Lee Jung-yeon takes us to this year's Seoul Fashion Week.
Denim on denim, pink shorts in winter, retro haircuts and belts for necklaces. Anything and everything is welcome here at the 2018 Fall-Winter Hera Seoul Fashion Week. The heavy influence of street fashion in Korean pop culture, as well as ready-to-wear clothing that's made to standard size to fit the general public, seems to be what's drawing the big names to the Korean fashion scene this year.
I think the Korean designers have a very distinct point of view. I mean, there's a whole, visual, verbal kind of dialogue that's happening here that we don't see anywhere else. So it's a really great time to be in this Korean market.
I would like to see very street. We need a new designer that goes in that direction, and it's something that it works really well in the market.
Some 90 emerging designers are showcasing their collections to an international audience of around 300 foreign buyers and the press, with some 37 top local brands also taking part.
I just came back from a New York show, but as a Korean, it's a huge honor to showcase my work through Seoul Fashion Week, and it's a must-do for a Korean designer aiming to step out onto the international stage.
The opening day kicked off with the event's first ever hanbok fashion show, a collection by top-tier hanbok designer Kim Hae-sun. It's not the norm to feature traditional wear on the runway in fashion weeks, but this is something the director has been planning for a long time.
Every year we have hundreds of foreigners coming to the show. Although it's important to show them the modern Korean style, I think showing something traditional is more important.
Jazz band Prelude joined up with Lee Hee-moon, the lead vocalist of Sing, a band that combines rock and Korean folk music, to add some cultural fusion to the opening event. The 2018 Fall-Winter Hera Seoul Fashion Week will run until March 24th at the Dongdaemun Design Plaza in Seoul. Lee Jung-hyun, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea's first ever gold medalist at the Winter Paralympic Games, Sin Eui-hyun, has been named on the International Paralympic Committee's list of the top 5 medalists at the Pyeongchang Winter Paralympics, labelling him as the host nation hero. The IPC cited Shin's gold medal finish in the men's 7.5-kilometre sitting cross-country event. He added a 15-kilometre sitting cross-country bronze prior to his gold medal finish, making him South Korea's most highly decorated Winter Paralympian.
Good morning. Take out your winter jacket as the cold weather is back again on this spring equinox, known in Korea as Chungbun. The spring chill is believed to arrive in East Asia around this time along with strong winds, and that was the case this year along with snowfall. Meanwhile, Beijing will have better conditions, but expect warmer conditions starting next week. But for today, winter seems to be in full swing here in South Korea. A heavy snow advisory was expanded to more regions as of 8 a.m. this morning. And most parts will see a mix of snow and rain all day, while Seoul could also see some in the afternoon. And temperatures will remain in the lower single digits for most areas, and Seoul will only get up to 4 degrees Celsius. Daegu and Daejeon will make it to 3 degrees this afternoon. With that, let's take a look at the international weather for viewers around the world. So wintry chill is expected throughout the day with some snow in South Korea. Most parts of North Korea will have much milder temperatures under cloudy to partly sunny skies. And as for the rest of Asia, Islamabad and New Delhi will have a rainy Wednesday. Morning rain in Perth will not bring much relief from the heat. We don't expect it high of 36 degrees Celsius. And heading to North America, a winter storm warning was issued for New York and the DC region, with snow expected for Wednesday. And as for South America, most parts will have the repeat of Tuesday's weather conditions. Taking you to Europe, London will see a mix of sunshine and clouds on Wednesday. Lastly, to Africa, rain will bring down the temperatures even further in Algiers. And that's all the weather update for now.
Okay, well, that's where we're going to leave our news bulletin for now on this Wednesday morning here in Seoul. Our next bulletin is coming up at noon Korea time in around an hour and a half from now. So until then, goodbye.
Don't hold back. Conquer challenges. Draw a brighter world. The next Korea Generation Y.